recording this one right after I just recorded the Gokaiger one. I hope my voice can keep up, because after talking for that long, my voice was starting to go. So if I start to get more quiet or stutter, that's probably why, and I'm sorry. Keeping it going with the 36th Sentai season in 2012, and that was Tokumi Sentai Go Busters. That probably would have made more sense if I actually had like harness straps like they do in the show. Go Busters was another season that I, during this journey, this was my second time watching it. So there's actually a little bit more I was able to pick up on. So yeah, just getting right into the things I liked, and the things that maybe kind of threw me off. I might have mentioned in my Maji Ranger video that Majiello also portrays a character in Go Busters, and that was Masato Jin, and the actor was Hiroya Matsumoto. And I just think he plays the role really well, and something about the character being an engineer and 26 years old felt very familiar. Although I wasn't a genius, nor was I that successful, but it did feel familiar. Oh, he's already an A+ in my book, kind of a thing. I guess while I'm on the topic of actors, there's an actress that I really like in this, and that is Arisa Komiya, because thanks to my friend, I enjoy one of the animes and I guess idol groups that she is a part of, and that is Love Live. So that one's for you, buddy. You're, and you actually get to see her voice acting skills again in Kyuranger as actually one of the villains, and she's a really good voice actress. And sometimes I fall into this hole where I'm on the wikis, and you just want to see what else the actors and actresses have done, and then it's kind of fun to go through like their profile and filmography and discography and all that stuff, and see what else they've done, because a lot of the voice actors they get have either been in the anime voice acting game or even just the tokusatsu voice acting game for a really long time, so they have a really extensive portfolio. And just seeing the roles that they've done, and just seeing like, oh, I watched that one, oh, they were in that, oh, that's cool, what? And some of them just have this really distinct voice that sometimes I never remember the name, but sometimes there's always a certain role that I'll remember them for, and when I hear it, it's like, oh yeah, good times. I think the story premise and the character backstory of the season was also really good. So it's actually pretty similar to how they're currently adapting Power Rangers Beast Morphers, in that a virus has taken over, and that there is this different dimension, but they seem to do it seems to be a more central part of the characters for Super Sentai, because whereas in Power Rangers Beast Morphers they were all part of a program that they all signed up for, and when they were about to become Rangers, things went haywire, and that's how they got into the mess that they're in now with Super Sentai. They got thrown into this position because of what happened to them in their past, and I'm trying to figure out a way to talk about it without talking about it too much. I mean, I know I've done like spoiler alerts, but it's really hard to, because of how it's based, it's hard to really talk about it in like a single like spoiler alert and then statement. I don't know if I'm interpreting this properly, maybe because it's like freaking 1:30 in the morning. The closest thing I can think of it right now is probably Tron, because in Tron there's, or at least Tron Legacy, there's a I think one of the characters is looking for his father, and he was absorbed into a game, and with the case of Super Sentai, you know, they were with their family during Christmas, and then, you know, things went haywire, and it absorbed their family members and a bunch of other staff members from the lab, but they were able to, you know, save the three kids, who would be Red Buster, Blue Buster, and Yellow Buster. And, you know, they were kind of trained from the beginning to do so. I didn't write it down, but I think what they did with the suits this season was also really interesting. You know, it takes a step away from the usual, like, spandex, and they do like a thing with pleather, and it kind of really plays into the Spec Ops almost spy motif. And I really love their team jackets, because they look like mission jackets, and, you know, they have a harness. And man, I know Sentai Jackets sells those too, but they're so expensive, but they're really nice. Yeah, not to get into it too much, but the villains that absorb the all the people and how that plays out later in the season, it gets deep and it gets kind of dark. It's one of those damn moral dilemmas. What would I do in that situation kind of a deal. It wasn't that apparent to me at first, but this actually does kind of have a that buddy system that I mentioned before, and for some reason it's not that obvious to me, because it does fulfill the criteria of, you know, the buddies are able to communicate with the Rangers on, you know, a separate occasion, or like outside of their mech. But yeah, they're actually referenced as the buddy roids. So in this buddy system, the buddy roids are, you know, they have like a companion-sized partner, and then they're able to serve as the controls for their respective mechs. And they actually have a lot of design details that match their mechs and their capabilities. For instance, Nick Cheetah, he has handlebars on his head, and he can transform into a motorcycle. And they all have an animal theme, which is why Power Rangers decided to call their season Beast Morphers. So Nick Cheetah is supposed to be a cheetah. Gorisaki is an ape, or Usada Lettuce is a rabbit, and then BJ Stag is a beetle, and then Anitan, which is actually from the movie, and, you know, an episode in the Endgame arc, is a frog. Cheetah, Gorisaki, Usada, and Beat, or Stag, are the only are the main ones. For some reason, it doesn't click in my head right away that they are that they fulfill the buddy system checkbox, but looking at it, they actually kind of do. I think the thing that, you know, it didn't match the same way that Go Onger and Abranger did is because they don't speak in a way that lends themselves as a non-human. You know, it's not like Nick always says "nyan," which is like meow at the end of every sentence. I don't know what the sounds for a gorilla, rabbit, or beetle are in Japanese, so that was the only one I can think of. But they actually do kind of fulfill that buddy role. I don't know if this was intentional. I would like to think that, you know, they did this for a reason, but they actually use references to Power Rangers in that they're the line that they use to morph is "let's morphin," which I want to say is a reference to, you know, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and, you know, the first Power Rangers and their morphin sequence of "it's morphin time." And then, you know, they actually refer to their mechs as Megazords, or Megazodo in Japanese. So then I would like to think that that is them acknowledging their Western counterpart of Power Rangers as a reference to them. And, you know, as someone who grew up with Power Rangers and is, you know, slowly getting into Super Sentai, that was a nice touch for me. I was like, oh, that's really sweet. And it just goes to show how much of a and influence that, Power Rangers has created. And I kind of wonder what else they may have influenced into Super Sentai in future seasons. But this was the most apparent, and I want to say it's like the first time they actually acknowledged their Western counterparts. I mean, they actually technically do in Akiba Ranger, which is the actual parody season, or not even season. This is like a parody miniseries. But yeah, anyway. So something that threw me off was the 2-part Uchu Keiji Gaman episode crossover, because I didn't know who Gaman was. It's not like I really had any previous experience with Gaman, but the second time around, I just took it as like a fun reference, and I didn't know that his female friend is actually the same actress who plays Shinken Yellow. But anyway, the Gaman crossover kind of threw me off because I knew it was a crossover, and it wasn't like, oh, just a random, citizen or person that needed to be helped. It was an actual established hero, and it's just one of those things like, maybe I could have understood more if I knew this character or knew their backstory or their character's history, like their powers or something like that. And this actually plays into an episode in Ninja, which I'll get to later. So I think that was the thing that threw me off, knowing ahead of time that he is a big deal, and what this crossover means, as opposed to just taking it as an episode where he's just another person who needs help, if that makes any sense. But I will say, after being introduced to him at least once or twice, after being introduced to him and then seeing him again, and then actually seeing him in Kyuranger, because he makes an appearance in Kyuranger, it's actually kind of fun. And maybe I'll get around to watching the Gaman movies, or at least the recent stuff. I don't know if I can go all the way back to the old stuff. We'll see. Something I didn't understand was why they chose to have a completely different theme like halfway through. I thought the first theme was great, and the second theme isn't bad either. It's just I didn't see the need for them to change it, because I don't think I've ever seen that before, where they changed the theme halfway in the season. So, or at least in terms of the 20 that I've seen at that point, none of them changed the theme like that halfway. I mean, they might have additional music, but none of them changed the theme like that. And I'm kind of going back to the fact that this is my second time watching it. I'm trying to think, maybe they changed it halfway because of the direction the show changes, because you can actually kind of separate the season into 2 parts, like 2 different major arcs, where the first part is where they're basically trying to go back to the dimension and rescue their families, and then the second arc is when they're actually trying to defeat the villain that has since taken over the role. Maybe that distinctive of a direction change is probably what prompted a new theme, even though they still use the old theme later on. And I don't know, it was a little weird, but I liked it. I didn't mind it. I don't know why they did it, but if I could guess, that would probably be why. I guess I kind of brought up like a new villain takes over. It was kind of interesting how they did this villain. I feel like this villain was really a force of nature. I feel like that's kind of Super Sentai's take on what would happen if an AI, tried to take over the world. Kind of. It's a pretty interesting take, and what they end up doing with it, the brief appearance of Darkbuster is really cool, and I actually think how Power Rangers is adapting Darkbuster, or how they adapted Darkbuster. I don't know how they're gonna do it in the upcoming second half of the season, or the upcoming second season. I like how, they actually went off with Darkbuster right from the beginning and, tried to incorporate it. So it was different, but I think they're doing a good job. But anyway, the villain for Super Sentai, it felt like a force of nature, but at the same time, it also felt like it threw in a little bit of Agent Aurora, or like Dawn Launders that I mentioned from previous videos, where they don't feel like big time villains. I think it's because there's a certain personal connection between the villain and the Rangers that is why it kind of feels like both, if that makes any sense. So because this was my second time watching it, and to the credit of Gokaiger, I had something to like look forward to and like support it with, kind of like, watching all of the MCU movies leading up to Infinity War and Endgame, which is something I actually did. That's why I was able to make all those references, and that's why that video was really freaking long. But with this, it's just kind of noticing more about the story, and that's gonna be with anything I watch. Like anything on the second time, it's gonna reinforce the things that I like or point out some other things that threw me off. And this really goes for anything, but this is the first time I really noticed it. But I felt like there were parts where I felt like they could have done more or expanded upon. And, the example I have written down here is Pink Buster. And she's not an actual ranger, but she just takes the moniker of the Go Busters. And they kind of use that in the movie later on, or one of the movies later on, but I haven't seen it yet. Because the thing about the Pink Buster is she kind of has this relationship with Hiromu, or Red Buster. So I don't know, maybe it's because I was feeling a little like, maybe the season could have used a little more romance or something like that. But I just think that was like one of the things I could have expanded upon, that I would have liked to see more of. Or maybe it's just, sometimes I don't like to see things end and I just want to see more adventures. But I don't know. But I feel like it would have been fun to see Hiromu with a love interest who's also an adversary. So I guess just into my favorite episode, and that was episode 40, or Mission 40, and that was Suffering Jay and the Messiahloid. With the episodes, I tried not to pick anything that was too personal. So maybe not because I'm afraid of sharing, just because it was more like I wanted to focus on, like, I don't know, the story or the episode rather than my personal connection to it. And, when I was first doing these videos, I thought that's what I was gonna be able to do, but it turns out subconsciously those episodes stuck out to me for a reason. So there is a little bit of me injected into whenever I talk about my favorite episodes. So I'm afraid that can't be helped at this point. So in this episode, long story short, spoiler alert, Beat Buster, Masato Ujin, has at this point a limited lifespan. I'll just leave it at that. Jay, or BJ Stagg, that they just abbreviate as Jay, is just kind of out exploring the earth, exploring the world, because he's a robot, so he never got the chance to really just roam and explore. And he's talking to Jin about I found a, what do you find? Thinking like, I found a leaf. Oh, but the leaf is on the ground, which means winter's coming. and he never got to experience winter on Earth, or Jade never got to experience winter on Earth, so he's looking forward to it. Jin's like, "What are you doing?" It's like, "I'm exploring, like, and sending you reports like you said I should." It's like, "Oh, you don't have to do that." And then Jay's kind of like, "You should do a report too." And then Jin, because of knowing his limited lifespan, he's kind of like, "Even for a genius like me, I think I'm out of options." And Jay found it a little bit concerning, and he kind of almost felt helpless, like he couldn't help his buddy, his partner. In this episode, the monster of the week has something that can fix Jin's situation, and then Jay is kind of having to defend it from the Rangers before they destroy it, and then they lose their shot at helping Jin. But then Jin arrives to the fight, and he tells him, "Just destroy it, just do it, it's okay, just destroy it." And then Jin and Jay actually get into a fight, and Jin, he kind of just says, "Can't you just let me mope for a little bit?" He's like, "I didn't give up, I just need some time to mope and process. Jeez, what's wrong with you?" And because then that's actually just how their relationship goes. They get into fights and arguments all the time. Something about Jin just wanted to breathe and just mope and process for a little bit. Like, it felt kind of real. Kind of reminded me of some of my struggles with death in that regard. Not that I had a limited lifespan, but sometimes maybe let's just say I was too open with talking about death and my mortality and fun stuff like that. So I was able to relate as Jay's kind of telling Jin to stand down. He says something kind of beautiful about the coming winter. The translation may be a little off, but I think what I got from it was, I don't know if I'll be able to see the winter without his buddy, the guy who made him. And he's like kind of sad that he may not be able to experience the winter with him, which I think is kind of where the beauty in that scene was. And then it just kind of shows Jay's loyalty to Jade. Apparently there was also no Toku scene for this episode. Something about those where they actually get to focus on the story and the episode are pretty good. This episode had a little close to home for me, and maybe talking about it wasn't exactly the most cohesive or coherent thing or the most interesting thing, but definitely one that I'm always gonna remember. I think it's related to it a little bit too much, that's all. I always seem to find lessons in the things that I enjoy. Such a weenie.